It is a special honor to be here in Clarendon County, because Clarendon County is the place that showed me and showed America that when ordinary people come together, extraordinary things can happen. That's the Clarendon County I know. I know how 60 years ago the NAACP's James Hinton dared to ask why white children could ride buses to school, but black children had to walk. I know how Reverend J. Delane, a preacher and teacher in summertime, heard that call and joined with Levi Pearson, a father who was sick and tired of seeing his children walk 9 miles to school. And with Harry and Eliza Briggs and more than a dozen other parents, challenged unequal education, not just in South Carolina, but all across America. I know that because of that challenge, Harry Briggs lost his job at the local service station. Eliza Briggs lost hers at a local hotel. Reverend Delane's home was burned to the ground while the fire department stood by and watched. It would have been easy for them to stay home, to heed the voices of caution and convenience that said, wait, the timing isn't right, the country just isn't ready. It would have been easy for them to give in to the fears that no doubt kept them awake some nights. But I know that because they were willing to overcome their fears and reach for a larger dream, the Supreme Court overturned separate but equal. And Congress passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I know that I stand on their shoulders and that their courage and sacrifice 6 decades ago makes it possible for me today to run to be the next president of the United States of America. So I know Clarendon County, the Clarendon County that showed a nation how to look up instead of look down, how to stand up straight instead of bending over. The Clarendon County that made a claim on the American dream. The Clarendon County that changed the course of history. But I also know another Clarendon County. I know schools in the corridor of shame. I know I was in J.V. Martin Junior High School in Dillon and learned how it was built more than a century ago, and for years had shattered windows, leaking ceilings, broken bathrooms. I went into the gymnasium there where the kids assemble, and in August it's 100 degrees inside because it's an old boxing ring built in 1926. And I saw the buildings in disrepair, so the folks had to go into trailers to teach, and the trains were running right by, and every time the train went by, the teachers had to be quiet and wait till the trains passed. That's not back in the 1950s, that's not in the 1960s, that's today. I know South Carolina has the worst high school dropout rate in America. I know that all across this nation, 1 out of every 4 children go to schools just like J.V. Martin and take away the same message, that we don't care enough about their education to do better by them, that we consider them those kids instead of our kids. I know that America today is still blind to the poverty in our midst, and that we still tolerate Gina justice for some and Scooter Libby justice for others. I know that black parents in Clarendon are still having to go to court to give their children an equal education 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education. So there's another side to Clarendon County, another side of America still waiting for what Harry and Eliza Briggs hoped for. The hope that our children's destinies aren't written before they're born. The hope that one day the world as it is and the world as it might be should be one and the same. That is why I stand before you today as candidate for President of the United States of America, because I don't want to wait any longer. We've been waiting too long. It's time, right now, to bring about the changes in America that we've been waiting for so long. I'm running because I refuse to accept that the way it is the way it has to be. I refuse to accept that when I hear adults say things like, these kids can't learn, or these kids come from tough backgrounds, or these kids are too far behind, I want us to say we need to start treating these kids like our kids. That they can learn just like every other child can learn. That they can go to college just like every child can go to college. They can compete in this global economy just like every other child can compete. They're all God's children, black and white. I'm running because I want a sense of urgency about our children in Washington. When I'm in the White House, we'll reform No Child Left Behind. We won't be leaving the money behind for No Child Left Behind. We're going to recruit an army of new teachers and make sure they come to teach in places like Manning. Because the most important factor in a child's education is the person standing in front of the classroom. We're going to pay all our teachers more money. We can't say we value education and then devalue teachers. It doesn't work that way. We'll invest in early childhood education because every dollar we put in to early childhood education, we get back $7 in reduced dropout rates and reduced delinquency and reduced prison rates and more young people who can go on to college and get a good job. And we'll rebuild our broken schools because it makes no sense to build new prisons and keep old schools. Let's invest in new schools and put some of those prisons out of business. We know why this matters. It's not just that a good education is essential to helping the children of today compete effectively as the workers of tomorrow. It's the promise of a good education that makes it possible for every child to transcend the barriers of race and class and background and achieve their God-given potential. That's why Harry and Eliza Briggs put their names on that lawsuit. That's why so many others risk so much to give their children an equal education. That's my story, because I wasn't born into wealth and privilege. I wasn't like the President George Bush, born with a silver spoon in my mouth. My daddy wasn't President of the United States. You know, I had to work and get an education and get scholarships to get ahead. That's what the American story is supposed to be about. That's a cause that is worth fighting for. A quality education is worth fighting for. Universal health care is worth fighting for. Economic opportunity for all people is worth fighting for. Equality is still worth fighting for. And when I'm president, we're going to have a government that helps us win these fights. Not because it's up to me alone, not because I have a corner on all the best ideas, but because I understand that we need more than a new campaign or a new candidate. We need a movement. We need a president ready to partner with you. Not too important to do so. We don't need some president who's up here. We need a president down here with ordinary folk who know what they've gone through, who knows what it's like to try to pay the bills, who knows what it's like to see his mama sick and maybe can't pay the insurance. Ready to move the American people on the common causes that we all share. Willing to ask all of you to do your part, not just as voters, but as citizens. Because the truth is, no matter how many government programs we launch or how many tax dollars we spend, we can still fall short if each of us is unwilling to do our own part. You know, we can talk all we want about education, but if our parents don't turn off the TV set and put away the video games and make sure your child is doing their homework and go meet with the teachers and find out what's going on in the school, it's not going to make a dime's worth of difference. Parents got to parent if we're going to make a difference in our schools. We can fall short if we don't heal the hole in the hearts of all those young men standing on street corners in every city in this country without a sense of any destiny other than just ending up in a jail cell. And healing that hole is going to take more than a change in policy. It's got to require a change of heart. We're going to have to reclaim in our own lives the belief that I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. It's the belief that led the folks in Clarendon not to turn their backs on Harry Briggs and his fellow foot soldiers, but to offer them money while their credit was cut at the local store and a place to stay when they were kicked off the land. It's the belief that led a white judge named J. Waits Waring to stand by their side even after a cross was burned on his lawn and shots were fired into his living room. And it's the belief that led me into public service more than 2 decades ago. You know, some of you may know, after college, I walked away from a career on Wall Street and went to work with a group of churches as a community organizer on the south side of Chicago so I could fight for folks who had just seen the steel plants close and knew what it was like to be laid off a job. And ever since, I've been fighting to put the American dream within reach of every American. That's why I went to work as a civil rights lawyer, to make sure everybody had the right to vote. That's why I went to work as a state senator, to make sure that everybody had the health care that they needed. That's why I am now a United States senator, to make sure that the American dream extends to everybody. That's why I expanded health care to 150,000 children and their parents in Illinois. That's why I led the fight to reform a death penalty system that was broken and it had sent 13 innocent men to death row. That's why I led the fight to reform racial profiling in Illinois. That's why you can trust that I will fight for you when I become president of the United States of America. Now, I hope you all don't mind. I'm going to be a little honest now. Because I've heard some folks say, oh yeah, he talks good. We like his wife. He got some pretty children. But you know, we're just not sure that America's ready for an African-American president. Y'all heard that before. You've heard the same voices you heard 50 years ago. Now, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe we need to wait. America's not ready. So I just want y'all to be clear. I would not be running if I weren't confident I was going to win. I'm not interested in second place. I'm not running to be vice president. I'm not running to be secretary of something or other. I was doing just fine before I started running for president. I'm a United States senator already. Everybody already knows me. I already sold a lot of books. I don't need to run for president to get on television or on the radio. I've been on Oprah. I'm running to be president of the United States of America. I am confident I can win. We are tied up in Iowa right now. And let me tell you, there aren't a lot of folks in Iowa that look like me. And we're doing just fine. Because they understand that what we stand for is change. And change isn't a black or a white thing. Change is what American people are hungry for right now because they are sick and tired of George W. Bush. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white if you don't have health insurance. It doesn't matter if you're black or white if your child is in a underfunded school. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. When you look at how our standing in the world has diminished, every country is asking, what's wrong with America? Why is it they think they can only solve problems with our military and can't solve problems with our diplomacy? Everybody is asking the question, why can't we turn the page and write a new chapter in American history? Why can't we pull America together? So we're not just a collection of red states and blue states, but we're the United States of America. So I wouldn't be running if I wasn't confident I could win. So the brothers and sisters out there telling folks I can't win, don't defeat ourselves. Get that out of your mind that you can't do something. I don't believe in you can't do something. Yes, we can do something. What kind of message are we sending to our children? You can't do something. Yes, you can do something. We're doing something right now. That's exactly right. But here's the thing, though. I'm not just asking you to take a chance on me. I'm also asking you to take a chance on your own aspirations and your own sense of possibility, your own imagination about what America might be. Just imagine what we could do as partners in an Obama administration. Imagine a president who was raised like I was by a single mom who had to work and go to school and raise her kids and accept food stamps once in a while. Imagine having a president who knows what that's like. Imagine a president who can go into the Holly Courts apartments here in Manhattan or Scott's Branch High School in Somerton and give the young men and women there someone to look up to. Tell them my own story of struggles. How I got in trouble when I was in high school. How I made mistakes but somehow was still able to overcome. Imagine a president who fought each day to narrow the gap between the haves and the have-nots, between the world as it is and the world as it should be. Narrowing that gap's not going to be easy. But real change is never easy. I can still remember one of the early days when I was just starting out as a community organizer in Chicago. We had set up a meeting to figure out how to rebuild neighborhoods and deal with the drug gangbangers that were hanging out on the corner. And I was all excited about this meeting, had set up all the chairs, had some of my church volunteers passing out flyers the day the meeting comes. Nobody shows up. So we waited and we waited. Finally, we start seeing some older folks coming into the church basement. We thought, all right, it's finally happening. Then one of the older people raised their hands. They said, is this where the bingo game is? No one showed up. And the volunteers I had recruited felt so bad they were ready to quit. And I was tired, and I was wondering maybe whether I'd taken the right path. Maybe I should have chased that corporate dollar. But at that moment, I looked outside. I still remember this, and I saw a group of young boys playing in a vacant lot across the street. They didn't have anything to play with. All they had were rocks, and they were just picking up rocks, and they were just throwing it at the building. Throwing it at the building. They just kept on throwing it. This was 8 o'clock at night. Little boys. Nobody to look after them. And I turned to the volunteers and I asked them, before you quit, I have a question for you. What's going to happen to those boys if we give up? What's going to happen to the next generation if we don't have enough fight in us to try to make their lives a little bit better? And I thought, if we can't put aside our doubts and our cynicism, if we cannot see that we have a stake in these children, our children, if we don't realize that the fight for their future is the fight for our own future, who's going to have that sense? And so one by one, those volunteers decided to stay. And we kept on working for a week, and then for a month, and then for 6 months, and then a year, and then 3 years, and slowly the neighborhood got just a little bit better, block by block, day by day. And so today, 60 years after James Hinton issued his challenge, I want to issue a challenge of my own. If you're tired of the politics of fear and division, if you're tired of a government that stands idly by while our schools go underfunded and our children go unemployed and our communities go neglected, if you feel as I do that if we don't fight for that next generation of children, who will, then I'm asking you to join me. If you can do that, if you can overcome your doubts, if you can cast away your fears and believe once again that real change is possible, that we are part of a long line of chain makers. That chain that ties us all together, that binds us together and says that even though it's hard sometimes, brick by brick, callous hand by callous hand, we can make a future that is better than the past. That I truly believe that we can bring about the world that Harry and Eliza Briggs dreamed of for their children. You know, I've been telling this story for a while now. Some of you may have heard it, about the trip I took to Greenwood, South Carolina. Y'all heard that story? A couple of y'all haven't heard it, so I want to just end there. Because, you know, I had been at a legislative black conference meeting. I was the keynote speaker. And a state representative there, Ms. Ann Park, some of you may know her, a nice woman. She was sitting next to me at this event, and I told her, I said, you need to endorse me. And she said, I will endorse you if you come to my hometown of Greenwood, South Carolina. So I must have had a glass of wine or something, because I said, okay, no problem. Nobody told me that Greenwood's about an hour and a half from every place else. So about a month later, I come in to South Carolina. I fly into Greenville. And I've been campaigning for 2 weeks straight. I'm tired. Get in the airport about midnight. Get to the hotel room about 12:30. I'm going into my room. I just want to hit the sack. And my staff person, before I closed the door, tapped me on the shoulder, says, Senator, you got to be in the car at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. I said, why is that? He said, we got to go to Greenwood like you promised. So the next morning I wake up, and it's hard to get out of bed. I drag myself out, and I pull open the shades in the hotel room, and it's pouring down rain. Miserable day. I go to get my coffee and open up the newspaper. There's a bad story about me in the New York Times. People are reading about it all across the country as I speak. So I pack up my bags. I go downstairs. My umbrella blows open, and I get rained on. I get drenched. So now I'm wet, I'm mad, and I'm sleepy. And we start driving out to Greenwood. And we drive, and it's raining, so it's taking even longer than we thought. Finally, we get to Greenwood. Although, you know, y'all got to admit, you don't know you're in Greenwood right away, because it's not like there are a lot of tall buildings in Greenwood. But finally, we pull up alongside a park, and there's a little building there. We go inside the building, and there had been some miscommunications with Ms. Parks, because she greeted me, and she was kind of irritated because she hadn't had a chance to invite everybody, and there were only 20 people in the room. 20 people. And I got to say, they looked like they had been rained on. Some of the sisters, the hair was kind of... It got a little... You know how y'all are about your hair, too. So they're all looking kind of grumpy. They're looking like it's my fault. But, you know, we've learned that Even 20 votes can make a difference in an election. So I go around and I'm shaking hands and I'm saying, how do you do? What do you do? Suddenly I hear this shout behind me. Fired up. Everybody says fired up. And then I hear this voice saying, ready to go. Everybody says ready to go. Just like that. But see, I didn't know what was going on. So I look back and I see a little woman. She's about 5'3". Yeah, about your height. Except she's about 65 years old. And she got a church outfit on. She got a big hat, church hat. And she's smiling right at me. She says, fired up. Come to find out, she's a city councilwoman from Greenwood, Miss Edith Childs. Famous for her chant. She loves to chant everywhere she goes. Been doing it for years. Fired up, ready to go, ready to go. So for the next 5 minutes, she just keeps on chanting. And I'm just standing there because I thought I'd be the center of attention as a presidential candidate coming to Greenwood. But she's stealing the show. So I'm looking at my staff, they shrug. But here's the thing. After about a minute or two, I'm feeling kind of fired up. I feel like I'm ready to go. So I join in. And for the rest of the day, every time I saw my staff, I say, are you fired up? They say, I'm fired up, boss. You ready to go? They say, I'm ready to go. And it showed me, it reminded me how one voice can change a room. And if one voice can change a room, it can change a city. If it can change a city, it can change a state. If it can change a state, it can change a nation. If it can change a nation, then it can change the world. So what I want to know, Manning, is, are you fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Let's go change the world.